Michael, you have a quorum, so you may start when we're ready.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the today's Livable Roadways Committee. So before we begin, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everybody. So I know we have a quorum, but first, do we have anyone on the line who is able to or interested in doing public comment?
Get any emailed ones or communicated any from Facebook. So it looks like unless someone's on the line, we're good to go. And I didn't recognize any non-members or non-staff on the attendee list.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, I think we're good.
All right, so then we'll close public comment. We have the minutes. I think that's our only action item today. So the minutes from the September 16th meeting. Any comments or questions on that? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Karen Kress, so moved.
Thanks, Karen. Can I get a second?
Second, Carlos Ramirez.
I think I had David first. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, thank you. So for the status reports, our first presentation from Johnny Wong, the overview of ClearGuide data and analysis platform. Johnny, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Lisa, can you make me the presenter, please?
I'm in the process. Okay, there you go.
All right, I'm hoping that you all can see my screen.
I can, yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my webcam because I have to get close to my computer and you don't need a close-up. Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. Johnny Wong, MPO staff. I'm here to provide an overview of a project that's been in the works for roughly 4 years. For 3 of those 4 years, it was just a vision that we had, but in November of last year, we were finally able to launch this shared data and analytics platform. And we're hoping that this platform or something like it could become a central repository for all mobility data across the county. And I apologize in advance because I know many of you have heard this presentation multiple times. Justin alone, I think, is working on his 5th time. So feel free to take a snooze and I'll wake you up when the time comes to ask any questions. For the rest of you, thanks for bearing with me. So the context for this data and analytics platform launching was in 2016, we participated in a federal highway pilot study focusing on data business plans. And the goal of that study was to learn how agencies of various sizes were acquiring, using, and managing transportation data. So we were one of 3 MPOs nationwide participating in this study. And they came to our MPO site and asked us questions about how we manage our data, which was the focus of the study, data governance. They wanted to know how data are being collected, how changes are being documented, who's responsible for data quality, who uses it, how do they use it, how is access being regulated, and other questions like that. The slide on your screen shows some of the topics that were covered in the data business plan. Again, this was a very long effort, so it actually covered much more than what is shown on the screen. But just to summarize, and I'll let you read through these as I'm talking, the most interesting findings from the study came from the 2nd, 3rd, and last bullet points. And these bullet points focus on questions like, what data do we have? What data do we not have? And we chose to address those questions by using a data and gap assessment. So we sent surveys to all of the transportation agencies across Hillsborough. We even expanded it a little bit beyond the boundaries of the county to include some other regional organizations and our neighboring MPOs. We asked them what data they're collecting and using, how and why. And the responses that we collected from these agencies showed that there are at least 50 or more unique mobility data sets being used across all agencies. And that's a really high number, but even that high number could be an underestimation, because we identified that there's the potential that the individuals responding to our survey may not know about all of the data that's being used in their agency. Another interesting finding of the study was that we found that the Hillsborough County mobility agencies are operating almost on the cutting edge of data and analytics. Even back in 2016, we had a lot of emergent data sources that we were using. At the time, THEA had a connected vehicle pilot study just getting underway. That study continues to present day. HART was scoping out the tasks for an autonomous bus pilot study to run an autonomous shuttle on Marion. They just recently kicked that project off. Many agencies were using location-based services or data from location-based services such as Waze, Facebook, Instagram, and others, as well as a host of navigation apps. And we were one of the first, if not the first, MPO in the country to participate in the Waze Connected Citizens program. The last finding, which I think is the most important or critical to focus on, is that there's a highly uneven landscape of data across the agencies. There are a few agencies that have a very well-funded and mature data program, and they have access to all of the cool stuff. They have access to a lot of very sophisticated data sets that allow them to draw sophisticated insights and informed decision-making. But at the same time, within the county, there are a number of smaller agencies that may not have those resources, nor have staff capability to do the analysis. And I think it's really incumbent upon the benefit of our county for those well-funded agencies to share their data wherever possible. So the idea for the shared data portal came to fruition last November 2019. The agencies in Hillsborough County that received a portion of this, that were supposed to receive a portion of the sales tax funds, decided that we want to invest in this data and analytics portal, and the MPO is taking the lead on that by initially funding it and using it to support development and planning efforts for the other agencies. So we've had this portal operational for about a year. The end of our contract is coming up in just a few weeks. We've gotten a ton of value out of it in the short 12 months that it's been live. We've been able to monitor changes in traffic patterns, which has been very helpful, especially when the traffic management center operators are trying to determine how to manage roadways during a COVID crisis, for example, or with special events taking place. For the types of analysis that the MPO is doing, this portal has saved us a ton of time. Personally, the work that I do at the MPO is very data intensive, and this portal has saved me a lot of labor hours in producing analyses that are also error-free because they're baked into the portal. So there's little opportunity for user error. The language on this slide, I won't get into. It describes some of the benefits of the data portal and how it's set up. The portal itself is using historical data, and it's able to track trends over time, which makes it a very useful tool for both operations and planning applications. ClearGuide is the name of the platform. It's an Iteris product. Iteris is a very well-recognized and well-respected firm in this field. It's publicly traded, in fact, so they have a lot of resources supporting them in making changes to this portal, providing regular updates, improving it wherever possible. The ClearGuide platform is populated with HERE data that we get access to for free through an arrangement with FDOT Central Office. That data set is real time. It can be binned in 5, 15, 20, 60, monthly, yearly, multi-annually, or multi-yearly intervals. So you can see that it has a wide application. It can be binned in very short time intervals for operations purposes, engineers that need to know what's happening on the network right now, or minute by minute updates, and it can be binned in multi-year ranges for a planning purpose, as an example. It also came pre-populated with weather data, so some of the animations that you're seeing on the screen are inclement weather that could affect the network, and Iteris is actually a leader in this field in using weather data in transportation applications. Aside from the HERE data, we've spent a lot of time building up this tool. This past year, we created supplemental tasks to bring in Waze data, which you can see on this screen in front of you. We have access to a number of user-reported issues on the network. Users of the Waze application can report crashes. They can report the severity of the crash, its location, potholes, breakdowns, presence of police, debris, weather. So there are a lot of new reports that are available to us because we're tapping into a previously unused resource of the people who are on the network. We also brought in crash data from the District 7 crash data management system. So we have a very refined source of crash data, and putting all that together, this is the first tool that we have available that allows us to see congestion, speed, delay, crashes, and incidents all in the same location. As you might imagine, it saves us a lot of time not having to work across multiple platforms to get that information. We've used the tool for many applications thus far. It's been utilized in a number of studies, a number of ongoing studies as well, so more program level. Some of the capabilities that the tool has is defining bottlenecks and reporting them to us in a consistent format. So I took a screenshot of the network, what was going on Labor Day just this past month, and you can see that the time frame in the upper left-hand corner is set to 11 a.m. It's very rare for us to see a bottleneck of 2+ miles at that time of day. Usually the morning rush hour starts to abate a little bit by that time of day, but because this is a holiday and there are a lot of travelers coming in from out of town, we're able to track that, and we can generate insights based on the travel behavior of people coming from a different county. And let me click on the next slide. It's also able to show static volume profiles. We worked very closely with all of our agency partners to get traffic counts brought into the data portal. We apply an algorithm that is proprietary to Iteris, and they're able to use this algorithm to determine what the AADT is on some roads that don't have traffic counts. This is a critical piece of information for anyone that's getting ready to do a corridor study. Volume on a corridor would be absolutely critical to doing a plan of any value. We're also able to do more sophisticated analyses. So what you see on the screen is performance metrics in the two furthest right-hand columns showing the travel time index and the buffer time index for county-owned segments. And we're able to see what the best performing roadways are and what the worst performing roadways are in terms of delay and the amount of time necessary to build into your commute so that you're not late for an appointment or for work or whatever else. This is also very useful as a public engagement tool. We think that it provides a previously unattainable level of transparency. For any of us who go out and do public engagement, it's not uncommon to sit in a room or host a workshop with members of the public, and they ask you a question, and we typically have to take that question back to the office, find the answer, and then go back out to the community or email them to tell them what that answer is. Now, if they have a question about what's going on in their neighborhood or what's going on a corridor of interest, we're able to bring this tool up and give them answers on the spot, which generates a much more productive conversation with our stakeholders in the community. The tool has also been employed successfully by some of our agency partners. I just pulled this example from the city of Tampa. They recently used it to evaluate the effectiveness of retiming some signals in the downtown district. So they were able to use a reporting feature that is built into ClearGuide already and assess the impact upon, or the impact of retiming signals on travel time and delay. And this, the ability to do this very easily is a great tool because you can see on a moment's notice that the retimings reduce travel time significantly between 8 and 17% and reduce delay between 15 and 48% on those corridors. And I've also just recently learned yesterday that Hillsborough County is using this to revise its signal retiming methodology as well. So they're going to be using this to determine which intersections may benefit from being retimed. So they're taking it one step further, in fact. Everything that I've shown thus far is what's possible in ClearGuide today, but we're developing a living roadmap with our agency partners so that we can build this out and make it a valuable tool, not only to meet our present needs, but also in the future. Some of the next steps that we've identified for taking this data platform to the next level include integrating dashboards so that the public can have access to some of this data. They, of course, won't have access to the back end procedures because we don't want them to mess anything up, but we'd like them to be able to determine what's going on within their community and on their commute. We were also in talks to expand the data that's built into the, or not built in, the data that exists in the platform. The priority data sets that we'd like to bring in include transit, origin, destination. We have a number of data sets pertaining to e-scooters and bike share, which we'd like to bring in, demographic data, bike ped, and a host of others. The only limitation we're facing now is funding. So we've got to determine what the top priorities are and then work backward from that. Long term, the eventual final build out will include predictive analytics. We'd like for this tool to be able to determine what the impacts of specific improvements on the network will be in the future. And so if we're considering installing a crosswalk or a new intersection, or I'm sorry, not a new intersection, a new traffic signal, or any other improvement like that, we'd like to be able to predict what the impacts would be in terms of speed, delay, throughput, safety, and a host of other measures. And once we get to that point, we think that this will be the only tool that transportation planners and engineers need to perform the tasks that they're responsible for. And that's all I have today. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll leave this slide up and bring my face back for you all.
Any of the team see ways that their agency might want to use it? I thought it would be great to like get a refresher if you've seen it before, but I don't think Livable Roadways has learned about this great one-stop shop for all of your data needs. So thank you very much, Johnny. I think some of them will think of ways to tap into this resource in the future.
We're working on setting a date for a forthcoming planning-oriented workshop on ClearGuide. So if any planners in the room would like to know the specifics about how to use this for planning tasks, we're working on setting that up, and it'll probably be sometime in mid-November, possibly early December, working around the holidays. So if anyone would like to attend, either get in touch with me directly, my email's on the screen, or Lisa can connect us.
Yeah, or once you guys advertise that, I'll blast it out. I do that with the committee all the time and give them updates on events they might want to attend. So
okay, great.
Yeah.
Do you have any members with any questions for Johnny?
I don't see anything in the chat or any hands. So.
Johnny, the one of the questions I had, because I think one of the slides there you mentioned the predictive analytics, and you gave the example of the putting a traffic signal in. Would something like this be able to predict or consider whether or not like an area is underserved by transit, for example, that if you were, based on, can it pair with demographics in that sense of, here may be a transit dependent neighborhood that is underserved and would be, maybe should be on deck first for new services versus say, areas where there's already service. Is it to that level of data, or is it just the actual traffic patterns?
It's too early to tell what will become of it because we haven't located the appropriate data set to bring in to monitor transit. That being said, I don't see why it's not possible. We're able to do that analysis now, but we have to do it manually most of the time. And you've seen our needs assessment reports on access to transit, the percent of businesses within proximity to transit stops. We can do all of that. It's just not as quick as what ClearGuide may allow in the future. But yes, that would be a topic that we're very interested in being able to provide to you. So when the time comes, I'll loop you in. I also want to mention, I know that HART recently invested in a transit data monitoring tool. I haven't yet had an opportunity to view it, but from what I hear, that tool is very capable and very advanced as well.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
So our next presenter, Joshua Barber, the Title VI and non-discrimination plan update.
Yep, thank you, committee members. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yay.
Wonderful. All right. Good morning, Josh Barber, MPO staff for the record. Here to provide an update on the Title VI and non-discrimination plan update. And I'm looking forward to all of y'all's input. So a bit of project background. The MPO adopted our last Title VI and non-discrimination plan back in March of 2018. The agency is required to regularly update our program by federal and state law, and is considered 3 years is considered best practice for update. The 2018 plan covers the following areas. It includes identifying underserved communities and where they're located through GIS, reviewing how we engage underserved communities in our work and what can be improved. We also evaluate the performance of past plans and how we measure progress towards more equitable outcomes. And we also look at internal agency procedures, processes, what the composition of our boards are, and the plan finally makes recommendations for how to improve equity within the agency. So as part of Plan Hillsborough's ongoing commitment to the community, executive leadership have decided to expand the plan to include the Planning Commission in addition to the MPO as part of this year's update. So, MPO and Planning Commission staff have been working really hard since deciding to move forward with this approach at identifying some major project goals in addition to meeting federal and state requirements for Title VI non-discrimination. This isn't something we've ever done before, obviously, and there aren't too many examples nationwide of a joint non-discrimination plan between an MPO and a Planning Commission. So it was important for us as an agency to identify goals for the project. And you can see those goals here. That includes institutionalizing equity throughout the agencies, updating and improving data tracking and performance measurement of equity conditions and outcomes, improving community engagement processes, and improving community representation throughout the agency. And these goals also have relevant objectives that we've begun to identify throughout this process that are currently ongoing. So just to give a bit of background, our country's major civil rights legislation generally states that we must not discriminate in the provision of any agency program and activity against the following groups: The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the first piece of civil rights legislation that banned discrimination against persons by race, ethnicity, color, and national origin. The Highway Act of 1973 added sex to that list. The Rehabilitation Act of 75 and the ADA in 1990 added disability. And the Age Discrimination Act in 1975 added age. The executive order on environmental justice issued by Bill Clinton included also minorities and persons with low income. And the subsequent environmental or executive order in 2000 added LEP, limited English proficient people, to the list. The origin of civil rights legislation in the US, like I said, requires us to ensure non-discrimination in the provision of all our programs, and started with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And all the non-discrimination language since has been modeled on this act all the way up through the ADA. The legislation was essential in preventing explicit discrimination that was manifested in many ways across our country. And this is just one example here on the left. This is the infamous Homeowners Loan Corporation map, the redlining maps as they're commonly called. And it shows that, you know, the legacy of discrimination still exists in our country spatially. You can see to the right of that the Black or African American population in Hillsborough County, as well as the low income population, and the parallels with the original Homeowners Loan Corporation map. And you can see that similarly with the rate of evictions over the past few years is primarily concentrated in East Tampa and West Tampa, which were formerly redlined areas across our city. Inequities continue to show between Black and white Americans in terms of home ownership, air quality, transportation safety, neighborhood safety. And this is really only a snapshot of one demographic group. Similar disparities exist across other lines of diversity, such as ability and income, sex and gender. And these ongoing trends show that while non-discrimination is an important first step that we must take as an agency and as a country, we must also contend with the legacy of our history and seek to influence policy to have more equitable outcomes for those who are most underserved. And so to this end, staff have developed a full project scope to advance more equitable outcomes for our agencies, the MPO and the Planning Commission, and are attempting to move beyond and continue to move beyond just a strict legal compliance standard of Title VI and non-discrimination. So part of that, one of our major first tasks is defining equity and justice. Developing a framework for talking about equity and identifying a definition and what the long-term outcomes should be as an agency. And one of the other major things that we're looking at as part of this plan update that's above and beyond the Title VI requirements is looking at the history of discrimination and planning across Hillsborough County. We think this is essential to gain a better understanding of the context of inequity in our county today. And acknowledging that troublesome history in a detailed way is an attempt to reckon with that past so we can better try to solve the challenges that we face. So some resources and next steps. We've been working with Charles Brown of Equitable Cities and Rutgers University to help guide us throughout this process. He's an expert in equity and transportation. And we've also been working with Danielle Jackson. She's a public relations expert here in Tampa and is helping us with our community engagement processes. We've also been doing other trainings as staff agency-wide. As far as this project, our timeline is we're looking to get a lot of our background and foundation work done between now and the beginning of the year. With the goal of having public engagement starting in February and March of 2021, and carrying out this plan and bringing it to our committees and the MPO board and the Planning Commission board sometime in summer of 2021. And with that, that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions and comments anyone might have.
Thank you, Josh. Do you have any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, I have a question, Josh. Well, I wanted to first mention too, I think that the doctor that you spoke of, who was from Rutgers University, Rutgers participates in a study for United Way called ALICE, Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And those are not necessarily people in poverty, but they're sort of one emergency away from it. And they may be people who own a home and have 2 cars, but they're basically living paycheck to paycheck because of all their expenses. So it covers a large portion of the population, especially in an area like Hillsborough County and Tampa Bay. So I was happy to hear that you're working with Rutgers. I guess the one question I had, and we talk about equity and especially relates to transportation projects, and that's come up obviously a lot in terms of, are we building too many highways and not enough transit service, or are we putting the sidewalks in the right places, things like that. So my question is, as part of this effort, is there any consideration given to maybe areas of the community that are sort of understudied, so to speak? And I say this as someone who actually lives in one of those red line communities in Port Tampa City. And you wouldn't necessarily know that now, but if you go a few blocks the other direction, you're in one of those areas that is high poverty on, I think, what was the third map, or the third highlight that you showed there. So poverty that existed in the 1940s still exists somewhat to this day, just outside MacDill Air Force Base. So, is there any consideration to that going forward of, okay, we've studied certain areas over and over again, but we know there are areas that we haven't done a deep dive into. Is that part of this conversation in the way that we would take that same approach with an actual infrastructure project?
Yeah, I think we can, start to think about that as an agency. Part of this process is doing community mapping, demographic mapping that includes looking at, what are some low-income communities across the county. And I think some of those demographic maps can help kind of guide the process of, what neighborhoods or areas do we need to look at. And then also, I think looking at, the history of the county and putting our neighborhoods in context can really help guide in that process as well.
Anybody have any other questions or comments? Well, I will put in a plug for my former employer, the United Way, and their ALICE study. When you think about how many families are out there that are obviously in poverty, it's somewhere between like 15-20%. There's another 40% that, especially in a time like this, have real economic struggles. Losing a paycheck or losing 2 or 3 paychecks, and someone who is not in poverty, how quickly they can get towards that. So, and obviously the impact of transportation and housing, and the availability of transportation impacting housing affordability too. So, thank you so much for working on this.
Thank you, Michael.
And then, so moving on, well, just want to make sure we're all good in terms of if we have any other comments or questions. So we'll go forward then. Our next presentation. So this is the legislative positions discussion, and so we'll have MPO staff. This will be an interesting conversation. So I guess Lisa, you want to kick it off for us?
Oh no, interesting. Yes, each year the MPO works with the legislative delegation to communicate our concerns and priorities. So we're reviewing the ones that were submitted last year and any updates to that, and then asking the committee if they've identified anything else we should be aware of. So I'll just remind you where we're at. So definitely we're a strong supporter of the West Shore interchange at I-275 and State Road 60. So that was supported as the #1 priority for the whole region. So that got communicated. We strongly oppose any legislation that reflects citizen participation in key conversations. Like there was a movement to restrict who could be on an MPO board and eliminating seats. So that remains a priority. The restricting the use of voter approved the charter surtax. So we're communicating that we would like our expenditures to be used for what they were voted for. Urging the legislator to take steps to reduce high traffic death rates. We all know that we're always working for that. So some of the things that the legislation has been discussing and tackling are like the use of cell phones while driving, increasing the penalties of those that are offended, breaking those rules, laws, like injuring pedestrians. We've heard from our community ongoingly the concerns about the drag racing, so we'd like the legislation to tackle that. And letting there be local control to regulate the e-scooters, so that we can deal with our unique problems instead of being a statewide issue. Support the raising of standards for hazardous walking conditions. This group in the past has been very aware that a hazardous walking condition threshold is a very low bar. So we support increases to that, and then support for the school districts on that cost burden, because that's been one of the big hurdles in that. So some other highlights are we would like more flexibility and control in being able to fund transit projects. So like tolls being more creatively, flexibly used for transit on the roadways. Last year there was an effort to eliminate rectangle rapid flashing beacons. So again, that's an important tool in our toolbox to help keep pedestrians safe. So those are the priorities and the things that we've had to respond to and are continuing to be a priority for the MPO. So we're just moving this through the committees to see if there's anything else we're not aware of or any concerns.
Thanks, Lisa. And I just wanted to go back a minute. Justin Willits made a comment. His microphone wasn't working, but he said that he wanted to suggest getting into the mode of predicting and planning for where communities of concern may go with displacement that accompanies some of the redevelopment of the urban core and traditionally transit-dependent communities. That was in response to Josh's presentation. So
okay.
That's
great. I'll forward that.
Yeah,
okay.
So just want to make sure that we had that on run into the record, so to speak. Thank you, Justin, for that comment. So if you have the agenda pulled up in front of you, you see there's a few letters that the MPO has put together over the last last two at least legislative sessions related to some of the items that Lisa was talking about. I think, as a whole, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone else correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel as if a lot of the issues we're still going to have to work on. I believe the interchange reconstruction, that's fully funded, but there's definitely elements of it that we're still going to have to work on just as a region to make sure that some of those local connections go forward the way that we want to see them go forward. Also, as we have had discussions on this committee and other committees, to make sure that where there is increased traffic due to the interstate program, that there are considerations made for local movements, both drivers and pedestrians, and so that there is sort of that balance between improving the interstate corridor, but also making sure that there's also improvements at the local street level for all users. I think the one comment that I have heard in some discussions related to transit, I believe there is an issue with the use of express buses in certain corridors, whether or not they could travel on certain types of shoulders. So obviously that's related to the T-BARTA, bus on shoulder project. Because I think buses can use express lanes, but there's certain types of areas where they would not be able to use. So I think it's just a matter of changing the statute. But obviously that's really something for T-BARTA to work on. As the MPO, I think, again, my own personal opinion, I think our biggest issue is making sure that we as a county still have the ability to impose a tax that our citizens voted in 2018, and we're still not able to use yet. And the ability of people to decide, what is best for them, and use the apparatus of the Constitution and the Florida statutes to do so instead of having it limited. Again, that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that as
Okay.
representative of anything or anybody else, but we have a lot of transportation issues in this community, and in 2018, our community decided to take care of it, and we haven't been able to take care of it yet. And a lot of our discussions are related to stuff like that.
Okay, to your concern about the express bus service, you can see here in this sentence that goes into a little more detail that the toll revenues can be used for roads and express bus service, which we've done studies to, push for that, but it's limited there. So we're asking that those be broadened so that you can use it for other, like maybe parallel transit routes to help that roadway, and just transit stations along the route and stuff. So there's some limitations on what else the transit funds can be used for. So that's communicated in our prioritization, is get more creative and flexible with that. So,
anyone else have, well, I want to hear from other people's comments, first of all, because, this is an advisory committee. We're supposed to give our advice to the MPO board. So, do we have any other comments on this matter? Hopefully you've had a little bit of time to scroll through the other letters. So I don't, we have, as an MPO, asked for a lot of stuff. Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
Thanks. And maybe I missed it, but I know at least the Tampa Chamber, or Tampa Bay Chamber, seems to include giving cities the ability to tax themselves if they want to. Just are those wheels in motion just in case AFT does get overturned? The city of Tampa would be. I don't know whether the MPO feels comfortable weighing in on that, but I'd suggest that as a consideration.
We kind of say it. Let's see.
Go ahead, Beth, if you had a comment, Beth.
Oh yeah, Beth, Sherry.
Thanks, Beth Alden, MPO director, and Karen, you're right. Actually, the MPO has taken a position about that in the past. We haven't in the last year and a half, and so we didn't include it in this roundup of our recent positions. But that is something that we've been advocating for. Shared that also with the Florida MPO Advisory Council. So it's part of their legislative platform as well. So that's a topic actually that the other MPO staff directors with the TMA leadership group were talking about, and that maybe we should include that in the position statement about transit funding. So I do think there will be a revised draft of that position statement on transit funding that includes that, and also talks a little bit more about what Mr. Marino was just mentioning about the buses on shoulders. There is a Florida statute 343 limits the state's funding, some of the state's funding for transit to intercity rail. And so the request from T-BARTA was to change that to intercity transit, intercity fixed guideway transit. operating a minimum of 50% in dedicated right-of-way. So that would make a lot more projects eligible in our area. It would, for example, allow the Central Avenue BRT to qualify for the support for operational funding for the first 7 years that Sunrail enjoyed. And so we'll probably be bringing that back as well. If Hart's BRT project goes all the way from downtown Tampa to Temple Terrace, that could potentially be intercity BRT, fixed guideway BRT as well. So a lot more opportunities there. I don't know what the chances are of any of this happening. I mean, I do think there seems to be support from some of our legislative delegation for bus rapid transit strategies. You know, but in terms of providing new opportunities for local governments to address their funding shortfalls, I think we've got an uphill battle there. And I think that's something that we're really going to have to kind of circle the wagons on.
Thank you, Beth. That is a perfect example of, you know, an initiative that we can take on, or at least, you know, put forward to the MPO, that idea of, you know, we don't have a shovel-ready rail project. There isn't a Sunrail on deck. But there is obviously Central Avenue BRTs moving forward, and they've gotten federal funds. But you know, we're a little bit closer on some of those BRT projects. So thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead, Arizona.
You can also use the little mini buses, because the long bus may be too big on the shoulder. So you may want to use the little mini buses. It'd be a lot easier to get on the shoulders down the highway.
Be selective which vehicle is better suited. Great.
Because the big bus is gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. Very hard to turn the corners. The turning radius may be a little bit too wide for the shoulders. But if you use the mini buses, like the old mini buses that they used to have, those have very, very good turning radius.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Arizona. That's definitely a good point about the types of vehicles.
I sure hope we get to the point of being able to choose vehicles.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I know we heard from Karen, Arizona. Anyone else have a comment or question? And I'll also add too, I think, you know, the agencies are obviously doing their best, but it does take changing the policy at the legislative level that's going to make some of these some of these things move. So I don't know, and Lisa and Beth correct me, but I think you know, Beth's point about making sure that BRT, which is a fixed guideway, if you build it the right way, making sure those are eligible for the intercity rail projects and changing it to intercity maybe fixed guideway projects. If we wanted to move that along to MPO policy committee or the MPO committee, do we need to make a motion to that effect? I assume we still have a quorum if we wanted to make a motion, but is that something that we're able to do, at least as in the way that this has been presented to us?
Okay, she's nodding, so we can make it in the form of a motion to officially add these things. I definitely took notes and was going to put them in the committee report, but a motion makes it even stronger.
Well, so before we go on, then I just want to make sure that you know, we saw the previous letter, so obviously there's a lot already in there. You know, we know obviously our MPO is pretty active in asking for changes both at the local level, state and federal level. Obviously, there's a few organizations who are represented on this call, business groups, community groups, school groups. So we're all advocates at some form or fashion. But before we entertain a motion, then, is there any other further comments or any other questions that that we'd like to put out there?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in the chat or in the question boxes, and I'm not seeing anybody unmute themselves. But
Okay, great. So then, just to one more time clarify. So currently there is a Florida intercity rail transit fund that can be used for projects like Sunrail, but cannot be used for a project like the Central Avenue BRT, which is obviously some level of BRT. And so what has been discussed, like Beth mentioned, is changing this program so that a BRT project would be eligible. There's a few other BRT projects in other parts of the state right now, so it's not as if making this change just benefits Hillsborough County. It's going to benefit several other projects. But I think if someone wants to make a motion, I think the motion would be that we ask the MPO to include in their legislative positions, asking the legislature to change the intercity rail program to also include fixed guideway transit, which would in that case include BRT. I see Justin makes a comment, can use regional job centers instead of intercity. I think that could be part of the comment. I think the program is called, or at least the portion of the policy is called intercity rail transit. And please correct me where I'm wrong here, Beth, but I think we're really just asking them to change how it's going to be, what projects are eligible for the fund. Correct, Beth?
Right, that's right. So that is the term that's in the statute right now, intercity. If we were going to change it to job centers, we would have to define what those are. Which is not impossible.
Okay.
It does seem to be a problem that's fairly unique to Hillsborough County because we have such a large unincorporated area.
But there are, I think there's I think it's like the First Coast Flyers in Jacksonville. I think there's one or two, like South Miami-Dade. I think there is one. So I think this wouldn't necessarily just apply to us. I think maybe it's come from our area because of the fact that we're in a unique situation because of our transit funding being currently held up. But well, is there any interest then for by the committee members to make a motion to this effect? Otherwise, we can just skip it and we can move on.
This is Karen Kress. I'd be happy to make the motion, but I'm not sure that I could succinctly repeat it.
Okay, so I guess I'll make the motion, and then Karen, if you want to make the first, and then we'll see if there's a second. But so the motion would be that we ask the MPO to include in their legislative priorities, asking the legislature to change the intercity rail program to the intercity fixed guideway program to allow bus rapid transit projects to be eligible for that source of funding.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And Kathy says she seconds. Does she need to say it out loud, Lisa, or can she just type it out?
No, I've got it. Okay, so you stated it, Karen's making it, and Kathy's seconding it. Is that how it's going?
Correct.
Okay.
And then so we'll take a vote on this. If you can unmute yourself, I know it's hard to do it all at once, but all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Thank you.
Information.
All opposed, say nay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think the ayes have it unanimously.
All right.
Thank you so much. We've had a lot of discussions on this committee, so I want to make sure that we gave everyone time to have that discussion. So
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
those are the most fun meetings when we have some discussions, and we're not running too far behind on the schedule at all. So old business and new business. Lisa, you want to kick it off?
Okay, it's Alicia's show now. Okay. So our governor has removed our virtual meeting, and it sunsets at the end of this month. So looking ahead, staff's been scrambling around with facilities and internally and meeting with lawyers, et cetera, to determine how to safely and legally meet in November. So it's still up in the air. We're still getting some things answered. So I thought I would paint the picture of what we know now and what is current, because I'm going to be polling you guys on who would be willing to meet physically in person to meet our quorum. So how the law is now that we have to, by sunshine requirements, we have to have a physical quorum present. We've had that be an exception because of the executive orders over the COVID time, but that's going away. So we would have to have 11 people, given their current roster for Livable Roadways, physically present. We are working on designing the planned Hillsborough room that we typically meet in to be safe for those 11 members. Plexiglass has been ordered, spacing, signage, all that stuff's getting put into place if it's not already. There's the gamble of whether it'll be here and all set up where we feel comfortable inviting you downtown. So that's why you need to stay tuned, but I will need to know which 11 would be willing. So then I also thought I would paint the picture of what you're saying yes to if you do say yes. So currently there's this big giant white tent at the Kennedy entrance to County Center, and fans and stuff. So you go underneath the tent and they have you going into one solo door off to the left. There's a no touch, stand there, get scanned for your temperature. So before you do anything, you have to pass the temperature check scan. And then there's a big table there with security and staff behind it, checking to make sure that you're valid to be physically in the building. Your names, the 11 people, would be put on the list to be allowed into the building. Once you've met all the scans, they give you a color-coded bracelet that's unique to that day. So only people with those bracelets can be, maneuvering around the building. Clearly, you would then go around the building once you're checked off from the little list. We hope to have staff down there to greet you, but we're trying to limit staff as well. You go around to the elevators. They're requesting no more than 4 people per elevator, but you would can choose to go solo up the elevator too, because there's very little people in the buildings. As I've gone down there to get supplies or return things to the building, I never have any problem just riding up the elevator by myself. Clearly, masks on during this process, and then you come up and you would be in there. Right now, we think staff might be situated at the reception desk and running the meeting from there, and then our IT support might be in the building. So that's what I know for you to be on the alert and stand by. And if you guys want to ask questions, and I'll see what I know, or if anybody wants to tell me right now, they have no problem meeting in person, and I can get you on the wait list to be determined to come. That's what I'll shut up now.
okay, so how long does that process take to go up and to get in the meeting?
How long does it take? Oh, not much more time than normal. unless there's a line of people waiting to get in, it's just pretty instant. You just get scanned, they check you off the list, you walk around the table and go to the elevator.
Okay. Have you all this?
I didn't catch that.
You put me on this.
Okay, Arizona, yay. Arizona's a yes.
What is the date of the November meeting?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought it was in the little thing. November 18th. Because of Veterans Day, we have several committees meeting that day, so we should be out. November 18th.
What?
November 18th. November 18th is community day.
Tuesday, right?
Nope, that's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 18th, 9 a.m., like our typical, because we have to, staff's always behind the scenes pulling our agenda packets together for quality control and confirming presentations and getting the mail out complete. We're working to get answers by November 4th and then the latest by November 10th, given that the 11th is the holiday. So let's see.
I have a birthday cake with me.
I'm sorry, what?
Will I have a birthday cake there?
Birthday cake? Oh, is that your birthday? No, because of COVID, I'm not going to be sharing any foods, or I'm going to be low touch.
My birthday is the 15th.
Oh, well, happy early birthday. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think, yep, my notes, I told you everything for that. So if you're okay, Michael, I'll move on to the next topic. Okay. So I'll remind, especially our new people, that we used to have a school transportation working group. That was a working group for a finite period of time. Livable Roadways was identified as the MPO committee most flexible to continue to coordinate school transportation issues. We do coordinate it at some level on the technical advisory committee because school board staff are permanent members of that committee. And then I'll remind you that the community traffic safety team has many of the same members that were part of the school transportation working group. And so they're coordinating things over there. And when it doesn't conflict with Livable Roadways, I do go over and coordinate school transportation topics from the MPO's perspective and hear what staff and enforcement and engineering and other folks on that committee are doing. The school board formed their on-site circulation committee. So they are coordinating with all of our agency partners on circulation and adjacent facilities for schools. But sometimes things fall through the cracks. So you'll see school transportation coordination as like a recurring item, a little tickler here for us to like let anyone communicate things that are of concern. And then I can go to work to get to the appropriate source to get some resolution and can report back to you. Emily Hinsdale reported last month that there were some concerns about the COVID restructuring of circulation around some of the schools, making it more unsafe for the bicyclists and pedestrians. And so since I was then made aware, I quickly got in touch with the right people. They told that principal not to go rogue anymore and got the circulation resolved and worked out. So I just want to let you know that when you see that on here on the agenda, that'll be an opportunity for us to like, let me know things and we can talk about it and get some resolution either here or I'll do it outside the meeting. So I'll pause for a moment to see if there's any new school transportation issues to be coordinated. Everyone should be unmuted so that they can just self-unmute and be able to speak. So
Thanks for providing that update though, Lisa, because I know it came up, and obviously now that we're moving forward in the school year, I think there may be more kids going back to school, yeah. So the school circulation issue is going to keep coming up.
Okay, and I did think of one update. I have been tracking and keeping track of, because there are 31 schools that need to be sited in the South County area in the next 15 years. That's a lot in an area that has been identified as having mostly substandard transportation roadways. So there's a kind of a crisis situation given Hillsborough County doesn't want to aggravate the existing transportation issue, but we've got students that live in the houses that are approved. So they've they're forming a school siting task force to address that. The MPO and the Planning Commission, the school district, Board of County Commissioners, and various people will be members of that. So when we do have this little update time, as those meetings and proposals come about for that, I can share that with the committee as they're interested. Okay. All right, given no news, I see no news school things, but I do see a bunch of people saying yes, they would meet in person. So thank you for communicating that now. And we'll check, double check when we get closer. Typically we have a walk of silence in and around the World Day of Remembrance for victims that have died from traffic violence on our roadways. So last year it coincided with the Safe Routes to School conference. So we held it near there and did a 1 mile walk in downtown, holding the signs of the victims and the details on the sign. So this year we have the extra challenge of COVID. So we got creative. I've attended some bicycle events where it's a little easier to stay distanced and feel comfortable outside. So we thought, well, let's switch it up and at least offer a ride option that you still walking is very viable as well. So because Courtney Campbell Causeway has been a great trail that we've studied and learned about over the years at Livable Roadways. It's near one of our communities of concern, and it's super family friendly because it's like completely protected from the roadway traffic. We picked that location. So what will happen is we'll meet at Ben T. Davis Beach. I'll have the signs and things at a shelter. We have Jean Duncan joining us from the city of Tampa to like say some things, and then we'll be reading the names of the those that have perished on our roadways. We're going to have masks for everybody, and we'll even have names of the victims, so they're kind of like they're on their lips as we do it, and bibs to pin onto the bicyclists as they travel up and down the trail to bring awareness to it. So I would love as many Livable Roadways members as possible to join us on November 15th. It happens to be a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. So that's our last update, and then these things are in your packet for your review. So pretty reasonable meeting today because we crammed so much into September and October that it kind of did this. So one thing I didn't mention about the November meeting is I believe if we cannot get the room designed with all the plexiglass and things that feel safe, it might be communicated that we'd have to skip November. So it'd be kind of like our July meeting where we just have a recess and then take action on everything in December when things are resolved. So stay tuned, watch your email, anything coming from Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other, first of all, if you can make it on November 15th, I know I'm planning to be there. Hopefully you can make it. Any other comments or questions from the committee? All right, well, thank you, everybody. Make sure you go vote if you haven't already voted. If you know someone who hasn't voted, make sure they vote. But otherwise, we will see you or hear from you in November.
Okay.
Be safe. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.
I'm gonna steal these comments and send them. Copy.